Imagine waking up, stepping outside, and instead of your usual morning commute, you find your car floating like a rubber duck in the middle of your own street. That's exactly what happened to my neighbors after the homeowners association decided to declare war on me. They thought they could ban me from parking my boat on my own property. What they didn't know was that I don't take kindly to being told what I can and can't do with something I worked hard for. And when they pushed me too far, I found a way to turn their perfect little suburban paradise into something that looked more like Venice. You can guess who was the only one smiling as they paddled through the mess. I've always had a thing for the water. For years, I dreamed about having a boat. Not some giant yacht or flashy status symbol, just a solid, respectable fishing boat I could take out on weekends, feel the wind in my face, smell the salt in the air, and know that all those long hours I put in at work actually meant something. Finally, after years of saving, I made that dream come true. The first weekend I brought her home, I polished every inch of her hull until it gleamed in the sunlight. My driveway never looked better. Some neighbors even stopped by to admire it. A couple of kids passing on bikes shouted, "Cool boat!" and I felt a surge of pride. But of course, in every neighborhood there's always that one group who can't stand someone else being happy. In my case, it was the HOA. These people strutted around like self-appointed kings and queens of our little suburban block. Rules mattered more to them than people, and they loved the power trip. The president, a man named Gerald, had a permanent scowl on his face like smiling might cause him to combust. His wife had this smug way of waving whenever she saw me, as though she were blessing me with her approval. I tried to ignore them. For a while, I thought maybe they'd ignore me too. That illusion shattered the day I got their first letter. Bright white envelope, HOA logo on the top. Inside, notice of violation. My stomach dropped as I read. Apparently, my recreational watercraft was an eyesore and against community aesthetic standards. They demanded I remove it immediately or face fines. At first, I laughed it off. It was ridiculous. My driveway was clean. My lawn was trimmed. Meanwhile, Gerald's truck sat half on his grass, half on the road, dripping oil stains every week. But still, I wrote back politely, explaining that the boat was on my property, that I took care of it, and that it wasn't blocking anything. Their response came in the form of another letter, this one nastier. Fines would start piling up if I didn't comply. That night, sitting at my kitchen table with the letter in my hand, I felt anger boiling under my skin. My chest tightened. I could almost hear Gerald's voice in my head, smug and self-satisfied. Rules are rules. I tried to reason with them in person once. I showed up at a board meeting, papers in hand, ready to argue my case. I talked about property rights, how unfair it was, how much I loved my boat. Gerald didn't even look at me while I spoke. He just shuffled papers, muttering, "Out of order," like I was some nuisance. The others nodded along with him, not a single sympathetic face in the room. Finally, Gerald looked up and said, "It's simple. You either comply with the rules, or you accept the consequences." That smirk. It made my blood pressure spike. From then on, the letters kept coming. Each one sharper than the last. They tacked fines onto my account, threatened legal action, even hinted that they could place a lien on my home if I refused. It wasn't just about a boat anymore. It was about power. They wanted to break me, to remind me that in their world they were in charge. Every time I pulled into my driveway, I'd see my boat sitting there, my dream, my pride, and I'd feel this mix of love and dread. Was it worth the fight? Was I going to lose everything just because Gerald and his cronies decided my happiness didn't might fit their picture-perfect neighborhood? The hypocrisy made it worse. Gerald's truck was always spilling fluids. Another board member had a trailer parked on their grass for weeks. Someone else kept holiday decorations up until June. But me? My boat was apparently a crime against humanity. I can't describe the helplessness. Lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, my fists clenched, thinking, why me? Why this? But then, one night, staring out the window at my boat glistening under the streetlight, something inside me snapped. My chest loosened, replaced by a spark. If they thought I was powerless, maybe it was time to remind them what powerlessness really felt like. That's when the idea started forming. A crazy, petty, glorious idea. I spent the next week quietly gathering supplies. Hoses, tarps, heavy-duty water tanks, connectors, trips to the hardware store where I forced myself to act casual, even though my pulse raced with every item I loaded into the cart. At home, I stored everything in my garage, out of sight. Each night after dark, I tinkered, testing water flow, checking pressure, running the hoses behind bushes where no one would notice. It felt like planning a heist. Every sound in the night made me freeze, heart hammering, convinced someone was watching. But no one ever noticed. By the time I was ready, my plan was simple. Turn the street in front of the HOA board members' homes into a shallow lake. I'd redirect water from the irrigation system and storage tanks, releasing it all at once in the dead of night. By morning, their pristine little road would be submerged. They wanted to tell me a boat didn't belong. Fine. I'd make sure a boat was the only thing that made sense. The night I set it all up, I barely slept. At around 3 a.m., I stepped outside. The air was cool, still. My hand shook as I connected the final hose and opened the valve. At first, nothing. Then, a soft rush, the sound of water pouring out into the street. Trickling, pooling, spreading. I stood there, watching it grow, my breath fogging in the air. By dawn, the water had spread wide, ankle-deep across the road. It glittered under the rising sun like a mirror. One by one, the neighbors woke up. Doors opened. Confused voices. What the hell? A car engine sputtered and stalled as someone tried to drive out. Gerald appeared in his slippers, his robe flapping, his face twisted in disbelief. He stepped off his driveway and into the water, cursing as it soaked through his socks. The sight nearly made me burst out laughing. He wobbled, arms flailing, nearly falling face first. His wife shouted from the porch, her voice shrill as if yelling at the water might make it go away. Other board members stumbled out too. They stood there, helpless, their precious morning commute ruined. Their shiny cars were stuck, wheels half submerged, alarms blaring from the water sensors. And me? I sat on my porch, sipping hot coffee, pretending to be just as surprised as everyone else. Then I decided to twist the knife. I walked casually down my driveway, unlocked my boat trailer, and let the boat slide a little into the flooded street. Not enough to damage it, just enough to make it float slightly, bobbing on the water. I turned to Gerald, who was red-faced and spluttering, and said with a smile, "Guess a boat doesn't look so out of place here after all." The look on his face was priceless. Pure fury mixed with humiliation. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Just angry gasps, his fists clenched at his sides, water dripping from his soaked pajama pants. Neighbors snickered. Some even pulled out their phones. For once, Gerald wasn't in control. Of course, the water eventually drained. Life went back to normal. But the story spread like wildfire. People whispered, laughed, retold it at backyard barbecues. The mighty HOA, forced to paddle through their own hypocrisy. After that day, the letters stopped. No more fines, no more threats. They backed off, silently seething but powerless to push me further. And me? I learned something important. Revenge doesn't always have to be cruel. Sometimes it just has to be poetic. Sometimes the sweetest justice is making your enemies live, even briefly, in the very world they tried to create for you. So, here's my advice. Don't ever let people steal your joy under the guise of rules. Because rules without fairness are just weapons, and weapons eventually turn on the people who wield them. And if anyone ever tells you a boat doesn't belong in your driveway, just remember, you might end up being the only one who knows how to get through the flood. If this story gave you chills, or at least made you smile at the thought of an HOA president splashing through knee-high water, drop a like, subscribe, And tell me in the comments, what is the most satisfying revenge you've ever witnessed? Maybe yours will be the next story I tell.